out after, especially the movie, but also the book, but written by Anna Todd. The movie was recently published, I think. Well, it's not that recently anymore, but it was like last year. And it's still recently. It's like just 1/22th of my 22th. 22nd. No, it's 20. What? How do you call it?
Sounds weird, but the 21st.
Yeah, I think it is. Of my life. Yeah, so it's 1/22th of my life. Oh my god, my armpits look like I haven't shaved them in like years, but it's just a shadow. But it looks like it's unshaved armpits. Who cares? Like, I hate shaving, so who cares, right? No, but I think it was published last year. Spoilers ahead for both the book and the film, especially the first one, but I also will mention some things from from the whole series, probably mainly the second book, but I'm confusing all of them, so they're basically all the same, so I have no idea what is happening in which one, except for the first one, which I have actually read like 3 times to film this video, so here you go. Yay! Very happy about that. I'd like to preface this video by saying that I have nothing against Anna Todd. I think it's a great accomplishment for her that her book got published and later even made it into a movie. A lot of the problems I have with the book are not necessarily completely her fault, as there were a lot of professionals who should have helped her transforming her fanfiction into a book, but that clearly didn't happen, as exemplified by a lot of mistakes and just the way the whole text flows. It is clear to see that the publishing of the book was very rushed. I believe that Anna Todd is someone who definitely can be a great author, as she has what I think is the most important trait in a writer, and that's determination, because she wrote such a long story. So I'm happy for her. That being said, I don't think that should exclude her from criticism. Point number 1, the plot. The storyline in the book isn't really a straight line, or a road, or a path, or a hill. No, it's just a roller coaster of kind of nothing, as it just repeats over and over and over again. And the film actually, surprise, improves on that. It does that by scratching a lot of the unnecessary stuff, thus shortening the chain of events. In the book, Hardin and Tessa fight a lot. Well, I think that's understatement. They don't fight a lot. That's basically all they do. They either argue or make up, sometimes like 3 or 4 times within one short chapter. In the film, Tessa and Hardin start, by flirting a bit and then developing some sort of relationship together. And when they finally get together, they just stay together for the rest of the film until the big, reveal at the end where Tessa breaks up with Hardin, basically. And even though it's a very, very simple plot, it works much better than, how it's in the book, where it's trying to be very much always like interesting and, put a lot of action in it and a lot of drama and conflict, but it's too much. And it's not even that interesting, as I already said, repeating over and over again. It's just the same formula. They fight because Hardin, is lying to Tessa, or he's rude to her for no apparent reason. Then they make up because Hardin is like, oh, I love you, Tessa, I actually want to be with you, I didn't mean that. And next chapter he's again like, oh, I told you I loved you, I never did that, I don't love you, I don't want to be with you, you're such a bad person, bye. And that's what happens, not just in the first book, but in the second and third, less in the fourth, I think, but still, it happens in all of those books, and it's it's like tens of chapters you have to get through just reading this stuff, and they just cut it out of the film. They find basically once, like something I would consider like a real fight, they do that once in the beginning, or like in the first act of the film, and then they don't until the climax, which I think is actually good and puts the film to the normal level of problematic teenage film, I guess, which I'm not saying is necessarily a huge praise, but it's still a big improvement. Point number 2, the relationships. So, the book Tessa is, well, an obnoxious person, as we hear her every thought, and I think it, in a way, actually undermines what we are supposed to think about the relationships. Let me explain. From the start, we are told that Tessa and her mother are really close. But Tessa always calls her mum, and I have to find her name, mother. Never mum, mummy, mama. Nothing like that. It's always mother. Not just out loud, but even in her head. And basically, she only tells us she's very close to her, but never shows that. Even in her thoughts, she always like, oh, my mom is like overprotective and overbearing and overachiever. Carol. Okay, Carol is her name. Great. I know now. Yay. Exciting. Wee. I don't know what's happening. And also, like, I'm always looking that way because that's where my boyfriend is, and I am talking like to him while I'm supposed to talk to the camera, so I'm sorry for that, but it's just like more natural to talk to him. If you want to say something, you can. I don't mind. I love you forever. You're mine. Yeah, I should continue. I want to finish this. Okay. And while Carol doesn't get a lot of screen time, we can still see a big improvement on the way she acts in the book. For example, in the first scene, in both of them, in both the book and the film, Tessa and her mum are preparing to go to the uni. And basically the first moment we meet Carol in the book is when Tessa comes down from her room, and she just looks at her daughter and starts criticizing her, telling her, I don't know if like her hair is wrong. I think it's her hair was wrong, or something else, but I'm pretty sure it was hair. And we just immediately see Tessa being kind of annoyed with her, and just not in the way like, yes, mom, everything's gonna be alright, but instead it's like, why is my mom such a not really nice person? Yeah. And in the film, Carol seems less demanding and more just, like a typical nervous mom who has been living with her child alone for the past 8 years. And now the only child is leaving for college, and she's just very nervous and, full of expectation, and yeah, that's kind of what you get. And Tessa is just trying to calm her down and being like, yes, mom, everything's all right. It's not being like, okay, mom, why do you even want that from me? Okay, you're right. I know you're right, but I really hate you. That kind of thing. I'm not sure if that's like adults, teenage angst talking. It might be. I don't know, but it definitely seems like that. And I never could have believed. I was never able to believe Tessa and her mom actually cared for each other that much. I didn't think they hated each other. It was just like, those two have a close relationship? Like, since when is this considered a close relationship? I'm closer to my socks than they are. Tessa and her mother, working relationship, as shown in the film. But it's of course not just Tessa-Carol relationship, it's also the main one, the one between the two protagonists, Harden and Tessa. In the book, Harden is portrayed as this rude British boy. That's like his character. Like that's his whole character. Okay, he's a rude British boy. And like, if you see the word rude in the book, you know who is Anna talking about or Tessa thinking about. Which then would be a good criticism of the book, like the constant usage of the same words over and over again. But that would actually that would deserve its own video. In the film, it's less about, you know, the scenes being very different. I think some of them are not in there, like actually most of them are not in the film. But the ones that are included have just, you know, a different tone usually. It's not huge changes to the plot. It's just the way they are portrayed. For example, the scene where Tessa and Harden meet for the first time actually plays out almost word to word. However, when it is just much more playful, and that can be most easily seen in like the last few seconds of that scene, as Harden leaves Tessa's and Steph's room. He returns a book, The Great Gatsby, to Tessa. He was reading that book, and he tells her how it ends, or it's not how it actually ends, but he just tries to basically spoil the book for her. But as she has already read it, she replies by, you know, correcting him, and he just smiles in a way like she passed some test. And we can see that actually Harden seems to like her, you know, because even though he like was kind of obnoxious, she was still able to reply, and she actually, you know, didn't take the books with her just to seem smart or anything. She took them because she liked those books. And that is basically what happens time and time again during their first and actually basically the only party that takes place during the whole film, which is very much different from how it is in the book. There are like 20 parties just in the first chapter. No, I'm kidding. It's not 20 parties, it's like 10. Tessa is dared to kiss Harden. Harden actually like seems to care whether Tessa wants to kiss him or not. He's not forcing himself on her. He actually looks concerned because he knows that she is dating someone else, right? He actually asks her if, you know, she's comfortable with kissing him. And I think that's actually great. And later when she accidentally stumbles upon his room, he's not screaming at her. He just kind of tauntingly asks her, "What are you doing here? This is my room." And she, you know, she obviously didn't know. Then he proceeds to ask her if she would basically kiss him. And she actually refuses. In the book, it's Tessa being drunk and throwing herself on Harden when he shows just a bit of like nicer side of him. Because otherwise he was just screaming at her for reading a book in his room. I don't know why he was even like... He was like lying in his bed and reading some book, and I think it was Wuthering Heights. That's completely besides the point. And he just like is so... I don't know. Here, it was playful, you know? There was some chemistry between them. Like, it's not just the actors, it's definitely more so the script that makes it work much better. Or, you know, later during a scene where they are in class and discussing Pride and Prejudice, they fight over Elizabeth Bennet from Pride and Prejudice, right? From the book. I already said Pride and Prejudice, right? Yeah. And again, in the book, it's portrayed as this like really serious moment where they basically discuss their whole relationship and like all the characters in the room kind of know that they are not talking about the book. Here, it's basically only Tessa and Hardin knowing that there are some references to what actually happened during the party, right? Because the teacher just like says, oh, this is the power of like a good book, because they are very passionate about it, right? And after the scene ends, they go outside and Tessa is the one going, look, Hardin, nothing has happened between us, so like, just stop, talking about that. And he's like, I thought we were talking about Pride and Prejudice. And again, it's playful. There it's like literally seems that they are like, it's so obvious they're talking about themselves and not about the book. Like, it's still kind of, even here I'm like kind of confused about some of the things they say, because it doesn't make sense in regards to Elizabeth and Darcy. Here it just kind of shows Tessa being insecure about the fact she drank some alcohol and she kind of actually wanted to kiss Hardin. So she's kind of projecting, like Hardin knows about it and he is kind of mocking her, but not in a mean way. Like, it's a bit mean, but it's still he's not trying to like actively hurt her, it's just funny to him, I guess, and it's his way of flirting. So a lot of the scenes that are in the book where they just fight and it's portrayed as sexy are turned into a flirting scene in the film, which makes much more sense. The other thing about Tessa Hardin relationship is, I think there is a bit more emphasis put on the fact that they both like literature, not in the sense that there are like much more scenes of them discussing books, as there are not like, as the film doesn't document every single scene, we can safely assume the interactions about books we see in the film are not the only ones. And that goes for even other things, like them discussing, how their father's being alcoholic. We see them talk normally. It doesn't seem, something that happens sporadically. It seems that it's just, a part of their relationship. After Tessa and Hardin get together, we see this like long montage of basically them dating, and we can see this, I don't know, it's like weeks or months of them being happy together. So we can kind of believe it's a relationship they both desire. And it kind of sets the stage for the next act, or like mainly the next film, where they get back together. And we, as the audience, actually understand why, because they spend some good times together, not like in the book where they just constantly fight or fuck. Point number 3, the bet. In the book, Hardin, after the game of truth or dare, makes a bet with Zed about who will take Tessa's virginity, which is disgusting. And it gets even weirder after we find out that Hardin took bloody sheets and a used condom as a proof of him being the first to sleep with Tessa, and he showed it to all their friends. The whole bet is just assuming that Tessa is an object they can play with, and it's just disgusting. Like, what? All the people there know, like, what is happening between him and Tessa, at least in the book. It doesn't seem that way in the film. I think he's more like hiding it from them because he actually fell in love with her while he was just trying to, make her fall in love with him. In the film, they just changed it to him making a bet that he will make Tessa fall in love with him. I'm not sure if they will even like include the part Zed played in this or not. It's like not shown in the first film. I'm not sure about that. I would rather them not, but if they have to, it's still like a bit better. But at least it's kind of acknowledging Tessa's agency, because like taking someone's virginity, that's you doing something, but making someone fall in love with you means that they have to fall in love with you. So I think in that regards, like they have to do something, right? Like I understand it, like you have to have sex with the person, but like theoretically he could just like rape her and, you know, he would still achieve his goal. Like, I'm glad he didn't rape her, but, you know, like, it wouldn't be against the rules of the bet. Like, the only thing he had to do was, you know, take her virginity, right? Whatever virginity actually is. Also, what if she didn't bleed? Like, would they wouldn't believe him? Well, I understand they wouldn't, but like, what would he do? Like, would he film himself having sex with her? With the falling in love, it is also acknowledging her part in the whole story. So in that, it's better, and also it's just, again, that's been done before, you know. It's not as disgusting, it's still bad, but not as vomit-inducing. Point number 4, the last important point, the letter. Both in the book, but it's actually in the second book, let's put it aside, and in the film, Hardin writes a letter to Tessa, stating how much he loves her and that he's been a jerk, and that he's fucked up, and that he basically just destroyed their whole relationship. Despite this being, you know, a key element to both the film and the book, there is a huge difference. In the book, Hardin, you know, gives Tessa this like expensive gift for her birthday, which is accompanied with this letter. I think that's what happens. I'm not completely sure. I will correct it if it's wrong. And basically, that's what makes her forgive him. It just like nudges her in the direction, and she just goes right back to his arms. But in the film, it's handled differently. He actually writes this as a part of an assignment about, I think it was Pride and Prejudice, I'm not sure. It's basically an essay he wrote for his teacher. It's directed at Tessa, but he doesn't give it to her. It's the teacher who does. So we can pretty safely assume, I hope they will not change it in the second film, but we can pretty safely assume he never intended for that letter to reach Tessa. So it's much less manipulative, and we can easily, or more easily, understand why Tessa in the end forgives him. Because it always baffled me how she just, you know, she knows he wrote it to her. Like, it is not supposed to be manipulative in the book, but it definitely is. Like, I have no idea why she actually believed that letter, right? After all that Hardin has done, he just used some nice words and quotes from their favorite book, and she suddenly all swooned by him again. She is aware of the fact he could just lie in the letter. Not that it isn't possible for him to come up with what he wrote in the essay in the spot, but there was no reason for him not to be truthful in that text, as he didn't expect for Tessa to ever even see it, ever know about it. Point number 5, the small stuff. I think the most important one to me is the change in Tessa's wardrobe. In the book, she dresses very conservatively, and we don't really see a reason for that. I think they are Christian, but it's not like a huge part of their lives. And I understand that she, you know, doesn't want to dress provocative because she's this like pure nice girl, you don't know. But like wearing stuff that is definitely outdated, even in like a small town where she lived, it just doesn't make much sense. Or if she wore those kind of clothes, she would notice, right? But no, she doesn't, and it just creates this weird disconnect. We should be able to see how big the gap between Tessa and, you know, Hardin's and Steph's friends is, right? These guys are like the punks, and she's this nice boring girl. But it actually makes less sense when Tessa already dresses weirdly. She doesn't have to come into this group to feel like her way of dressing herself isn't appropriate. They changed that. In the film, she dresses completely normally. Like, yeah, it's very basic and nothing outrageous, but instead of like super baggy t-shirts and really long skirts and like all like office type of outfits, she wears jeans and t-shirts and blouses and dungarees and the maroon dress, which is like this. It's a huge deal in the book, okay? I think it's supposed to be, again, like a very formal formal attire you would wear to like a meeting, not to a party. And they actually kind of do that in the film as well. She wears this like formal dress, but a modern one. Something people would wear maybe to like a theater or to a concert or maybe to like prom or somewhere. It's probably not very appropriate to wear that to a college party, but it's like a normal dress I'd buy. Most people, I think, would actually think that dress is cute. It just is way too formal for that occasion. Another small point is Tessa's major. In the book, it's English Lit, and I think it's okay, but the whole like Carol thing is that she wants for Tessa to be very successful, right? And I think what comes to mind is, studying literature and trying to become like a publisher or an author. It just seems like something she would have to pursue because she is strong-headed, not because her mom is kind of like, oh, you have to do this, right? It just doesn't make that much sense. Like, I'm not saying it's like trying to become a publisher or an editor or an author isn't ambitious. I just don't believe that is like the typical thing parents want from their children when they mean, you should strive to be the best and successful. In the film, Tessa's major is, well, she doesn't have a major yet, but she plans on doing business or econ. And I think this will come up later as a conflict between her and her mom, as we can clearly see Tessa would prefer doing literature. I think that's a nice touch. There are some other minor things, or not so minor things, but they are not like huge part of the film, so I just put them here, like her cheating on Noah only once, and actually it's framed in a way that seems that Tessa is just like contemplating what to do because she's not with Harden and she doesn't want to break up with Noah, but at the same time she doesn't really want to stay with him either, and she's not the one inviting him. He comes for a surprise visit, and we can see that Tessa is not entirely happy with that. She's confused, she doesn't want to hurt him, and she like kind of pretends that she's very happy to see him, but she's mostly just forcing herself to be happy, and it's the same kind of in the book, but it's her initiating, the weekend visit and stuff like that. Like, she shouldn't, of course, cheat on her boyfriend at all, but realistically, that is what sometimes happens, and I don't think it necessarily means the person who cheats on someone is completely like, this terrible being. They might be, but especially since Tessa is very young, and we can understand that she's with Noah probably more because her mother approves of that relationship and kind of wants them to get married. I think Tessa says something along the lines of, she's been planning our wedding since we were like 10. So we can actually see why she might cheat on Noah, and it can be at least understandable. And it's addressed a bit better in the film as well. Still not enough, but at least, it's not Tessa cheating on Noah multiple times and then like breaking his heart and still staying with him just because Harden doesn't want her. And the last thing I want to mention is something I'm not sure is really that good. I'm gonna spoil a big plot point in the later books. I am not sure if I like, and this is gonna sound terrible, but like, just hear me out. I'm not sure if I like that Steph is gay. Not because I don't want to see gay characters in there. I definitely do. I think there is one later in like the third or fourth book, I'm not sure about that. I didn't really read those very carefully. But, you know, there is no other gay character in the series, right? Or bi character, at least one we know of. So I am all for including more LGBTQ plus characters. That is not the issue. I'm just not sure I want that character to be Steph. I actually quite liked Steph in the first book, but later she turns out to be the villain. And while Tristan is actually a good person, she is such a minor character. She just basically doesn't even speak. She's just like mentioned to be there with Steph. It's never, you know, basically Tristan is not her own character. She's just the girlfriend of Steph. And like I would hope they would like scrap the whole Steph betrayal thing, because it literally makes no sense. Like in the book you can clearly see it wasn't planned ahead, as Steph behaves distinctively different in the first book than than later. It just makes zero sense. It's weird and I don't like it at all. But I don't think they will, because as I said, it's actually a huge plot point. But I'm not saying it's necessarily bad. I also understand that gay people can be bad people. Like, our sexuality has nothing to do with who we are as a person, right? But you know, if the only character in your film that's gay is the villain, and it's like really a villain, there's actually no redeeming quality about that person, then I'm really not sure about that. So I think that is it. To conclude, I would like to stress that I don't think After is a good film. It is by no means, you know, something I would recommend you to watch, but you know, I just wanted to show you how it improves on the source material, and most of the things that are wrong with it aren't completely the film's fault. Like, if they wanted to at least keep, you know, the essence of the book or of the books, I don't think they could have done much better job than this. I think the fact that my boyfriend, who like didn't read the books, but I read some parts to him because I found them really, really funny or disturbing. He like was really scared when I asked him to rewatch it with me. And he was actually pleasantly surprised, not in the sense that he liked it, but he didn't, you know, want to puke. It's a weird one. It's a weird analogy. But like, look at my sock. I cannot. Can I get it out? Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah, it's like this. You see the sock? It's like a cute fox. How cool is that? How cool is that? I'm sorry. I'm showing socks. Right. So I couldn't like find them. Or like I had one and I had no idea where the other was until like last week, and I almost forgot to wash the other sock. So I almost couldn't take it with me, but I remembered like you know, 4 hours before we are supposed to leave or something. No, it was the evening before, but still. It was like midnight and I had to still wash my clothes. It was not a good idea. Don't do that. It's rude. And just pointless there. Yes, yeah, so